I'm talking about like if you are doing a CAP survey, to where they send like quarterly, they send that white style.
Yeah, I think it's AP out over there.
Yeah. All right, so I'm under quality assessment on page 13. It says the term quality assessment refers, I'm on page 13, right-hand column under quality assessment. It says quality assessment refers to the overall process of guaranteeing quality patient care and is regulated throughout the total testing system. Skip a couple of lines and it says in a clinical laboratory, a quality assessment program includes not only the testing of controls referred as QC, but it also encompasses pre-examination variables, examination variables, and post-examination variables. Move down to the next paragraph. It says included in a quality assessment program are procedure manuals, internal QC, external QC, electronic QC, calibrations, standardization, proficiency testing, more formally known as external quality assessment. So we're going to go through and talk about some of these things, and I will discuss some of my things that I've been involved with on it. Let's turn to page 14 and go to the first full paragraph. Page 14, first full paragraph, it says documentation of quality assessment procedures are required by all laboratory accreditation agencies. These are going to include people, you're not going to be tested over this right here, but I want you to start remembering and recalling some of these names because you will hear these names when you go to clinicals, and I just don't want that to intimidate you. So it says, the first one says including Joint Commission, the College of American Pathologists, that's called CAP. You're going to hear me talk about CAP surveys. The American Association of Blood Banks, AABB. You'll hear Jason and me sometimes when we're in a blood bank lab, we'll say, well, we're going to look it up in the AABB manual. Okay, if you've ever worked in a blood bank, you are familiar with a manual called the AABB manual. American Osteopathic Association, I'm not familiar with that one. The American Society of Histocompatibility, I'm not associated with that one. The next one, though, you do need to be aware of, for any of you that happen to go to work in physicians' office laboratories, there is a accreditation agency named COLA. I have never worked in a clinic. I've always worked at big hospitals, but COLA is usually who oversees clinics, doctor's offices, and things like that. There's a girl in town that's over all of the CHI clinics, and some of you probably heard her name. Her name is Debbie Rigsby, okay, and she's over lots of clinics everywhere, even the ones in Little Rock and all of that. But I know COLA sometimes comes in and inspects these clinics. Whereas if you're dealing with a hospital, you're going to be inspected by JACO, or you're going to be inspected by CAP, or those big organizations like that. Okay, the Urinalysis Procedure Manual. Next section down on page 14, it says a procedure manual containing all the procedures performed in the urinalysis section must be available for reference in the working area and must comply with all the guidelines. Now, if you go down to you can read about everything that has to be in that procedure manual. Now, I will just vaguely go over some of the things that you need to be aware of. Some testing procedures, like we did in the summer, remember in the summer we would just have you like get in that box, look at the package insert, and do the procedure. You can actually put a package insert in your procedure manual, like how we're doing chlamydia, or how we're doing monospot testing, or anything like that. But again, everything has to be in that procedure manual, and that means everything. The biggest thing that I can tell you is that where you can get in trouble with that is it has to be in the area. I know I used to have an issue, a place I worked at, one of our supervisors, I understood why. You have to update it all the time. There's things like every employee that works in that department has to initial that once annually, once every year, that they've read it or that they're keeping up with all the changes that's being made. It's a fluent book, okay? It changes constantly. But at the same time, it has to be kept in the department. So You know, I'd be working in urinalysis and, you know, let's just say the main reason people want to have access to that procedure manual is some tests you're gonna do all the time, guys. You're gonna be able to do them in your sleep, like dipping a urine. You're gonna do that every day, and you're gonna get bored of doing it. It's so easy. You're not gonna have to look in the urinalysis manual to know how to dip a urine, okay? But then, maybe once a month, there may be a rare oddball test come down, like there's a test, for example, that I vividly remember having to do every once in a while, called a urine myoglobin, testing urine for myoglobin. Okay, you don't do that all the time, and it's very manual on some of the reagents and stuff you have to add, so I would always find the procedure manual, open it up, and I'd cookbook it, and I'd do the urine myoglobin, because there's some things that you won't do as often as others. That's a basic need on why you need a urinalysis manual. Plus, you got new employees, you know. Lisa's been working in urinalysis, and that's the only department she works at. She's been there 3 years. She may not reference that procedure manual very often, but if I just got hired and I've only been there 2 weeks, I'm gonna be in that book all the time, looking at stuff, if Lisa's not available to show me or something like that. So there is a big need for that manual. And listen, when I tell you that, remember there is one for each department. It's not just urinalysis, micro, blood bank. There has to be a procedure manual out. So make sure you read over that.
Question.
Yeah.
You talked about the fluidity of this manual, how it changes, evolves all the time. Could you say that that's probably due to the advent of technology also changing all the time?
Yeah, that and just, you guys are gonna see, I mean, I can't explain everything. Okay, I need to stop for a second. I need to tell you guys, I keep forgetting to tell you. Also, one thing that we'll do this semester is, I know some of you guys, you hear me talking to people because you got lab experience. One thing we will do before clinical starts is we will take a tour of hospital laboratories. We're gonna pick a couple of days, Jason and I'll get together. If we do it like anything we've done in the past, as long as there's available time, we try to take one day that we go to Little Rock and we pick a couple of hospitals in Little Rock. It will probably be St. Vincent's and Baptist. That's where we went last year. And then we also pick a day that we go to a couple of hospitals at Hot Springs, which will be National Park and CHI Hot Springs. If we have time, we may run by Levi or whatever, but I want you guys to see a lab before clinical start. Because if you're like I was, I had never been in a lab in my life. I mean, that was a big deal to me because, you know, some of you take it for granted, you're already working in labs and stuff. But some people that have never been in one, you need to see one. So you quit just hearing me talk about it, you know, so you walk in there and you're probably gonna understand, well, this is what Britt meant by being intimidated. You know, because you walk in and you see all these people in lab coats and gloves and they're not even talking to each other. It's just like they know exactly where to go and what to do, and it's a smooth flow. You see all of these huge instruments. I mean, it's pretty neat, you know, looking in there. But we will take you guys to a lab, so I don't want you guys to think we're just gonna tell you, well, drive to clinicals and hope you find the place. We'll show you around and get you there on that. Okay. All right. What was your question? I went off on a tangent.
The procedure manual, it continues to change and grow and evolve because technology also continues to change, grow, and evolve.
And also, labs try to save as much money as possible. So the lab director, you're always gonna see vendors at your lab director's door, and they're wanting you to change one, like, for example, I'm gonna keep this simple, like, maybe you're using a pregnancy kit made by Biorad. Well, there's gonna be people that tries to convince your lab director, you need to move over and do this pregnancy test made by Ortho, okay? Because first of all, we're gonna do it cheaper and it's more accurate. Well, the minute you change over to that different testing methodology for a pregnancy test or a different company, you have to make that updated change in your procedure manual. And every tech that works in that department has to be aware that you just changed the testing for the pregnancy test. Okay, I'm just talking about one test. And so you can imagine how there's changes being made and.
You have to do correlations too, don't you?
Oh yeah, critical values change, all of that stuff.
That's what sets those correlations.
Okay, page 16. Page 16, I just want to refer you to that blue box up at the top says criteria for urine specimen rejection. These are gonna be things that would cause you in the urinalysis laboratory to not accept a specimen to do testing on. The first one, of course, an unlabeled container. This happens a lot, more than you think, with urinalysis specimens. Depending upon where you work at, you know how I've told you guys, at big hospitals, they have a pneumatic tube system. So if the nurses are willing to like take a urine cup, right, the patient's gonna void the urine in a urine cup, sometimes the nurses will pour it over into a urine tube, like a conical tube and a culture tube. Now they can put that in a biohazard bag and tube it to the laboratory. They don't have to walk it down to the laboratory. But some nurses, they may not want to do all that pouring over, and so they've got a urine cup. Our protocol was, it may not be that way anymore, but you could not tube a urine cup in the bullet tube system. You had to walk it down to the laboratory. And so sometimes at a drop-off desk in a lab, sometimes they get in a hurry or whatever, and they've got that urine cup in a biohazard bag and they never put a label on it. Technically, they're not really allowed to come back at a later time and say, well, I know that's Britt's specimen because I'm the one that got it out of his room. You're not supposed to do it, it's gotta be labeled when you get it, okay? So that's a rejection criteria. Non-matching labels and requisition forms. In other words, if the requisition form says Jason Colley, but the cup is labeled Britt Turner, they're supposed to have to recollect that. If the specimen is contaminated with any type of feces or toilet paper, I've never really had that happen. They seem like they talk about that a lot. Containers with contaminated exteriors. Not want to put an asterisk by that one. Insufficient volume, improperly transported or preserved specimens, or if there's a delay between time of collection and receipt in the laboratory. I don't expect you to memorize all those guys. Just read them and make common sense out of it and be able to recognize that in a multiple choice format, okay? I mean, it should make common sense to you. If it's got the wrong person's name on it, you're not supposed to take it, right? If it's not labeled, you're not supposed to take it. If it's been too long and bacteria is multiplied and it smells like ammonia, you're not supposed to take it. Okay, so let's get down to quality control. Quality control on the very last little section on page 16, the very bottom of page 16, says quality control refers to the materials, the procedures, and the techniques that monitor accuracy, precision, and reliability. I'm moving on to page 18. It says QC procedures are performed to ensure that acceptable standards are met during the processing of patient testing. All right, now we're going to spend, I think, the best course to demonstrate all of the stuff about quality control and accuracy and precision. It's going to be the very next lecture I talk to you about chemistry, which will be not Monday, but Wednesday. We're going to talk about QC, standard deviation, and all of that stuff. But I do want to talk about some of these things. I'm just going to go to these major headings in the book. The first thing we're going to talk about is external QC when it deals with urinalysis. I don't know where you guys are going to end up working or doing your clinicals at, but this is what we use, and it's what I used at St. Joe. This is the QC bottles that it's from a company called Cova, or brand new thing that just got in. This is what they'll look like for your urinalysis department. This holds 60 mils of deionized water. You can see how it's lympholyzed. There's a powder in there. Okay, they're going to have different color tops, all right? They look exactly alike. So you can screw up and run the wrong control. Why do you think they're in an amber bottle?
To prevent light.
What analytes in effect? Good, bilirubin, right? So they're going to be in dark bottles. All right, so if I'm just looking on here and I didn't know any better, this one says Covitrol 1, and this other one says Covitrol 3, all right? So what happens is you make those up with 60 mils of water. It'll tell you in the package insert exactly how long they're good for once you make them up and all of that. And that's what you're going to run your QC off of every day. You're supposed to run those, I think the rules are once every 24 hours you have to run quality control for your analysis. It's gonna do all of the regular routine things. You remember from the intro class, all the things that was on the dipstick. There was a test question on that. Make 10 things that was tested for on the dipstick. Run all 10 of those on there. You also, those will run pregnancy tests on them, okay? One of them is a positive pregnancy test, the other one's a negative pregnancy test. You probably will start to understand in serology how we knew what all those results were, because me and Jason would make up patients' names and I'd say, look, I'm putting the level 1 control. This will be positive for pregnancy. This one will be negative for pregnancy. And we put names on all that stuff where we can see if you're getting the test right or not.
Do y'all use Quintet?
Quintet?
Yeah.
The machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay,
got one.
do y'all use the little tablets you put in your QC and it bubbles and turns blue, or bubbles and turns green? Y'all do that? Or I didn't know, I just.
The cleaning test.
Yeah.
Cleaning test, yeah. Which I've showed them that, they didn't perform it. Yeah, Tanner?
So, we're supposed to run the controls every 24 hours
Yeah.
and pregnancy tests every 24 hours.
Yeah. But you won't be tested on that, Tanner.
Okay.
I'm just talking to make it make sense to you. I'm just discussing about what'll happen when you guys go to clinicals.
And how many pads did you say were on there?
There's 10 on the reagent strip. I thought I brought something from the lab.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm not artistic.
I was gonna say, you were doing circles
I
yesterday.
see the beauty in things, but I can't make the beauty in things. It's really a sad thing.
It takes practice. It takes a lot of
Also,
practice.
it's like, one time when I was watching Mr. Patrick when I was younger.
I'll show you guys all of this stuff when we have the lab, but this is another
Yeah.
box of controls that you might use if you work in a clinic, okay? These are just little dropper bottles, and what you can see, there's white and blue ones. One of them's normal, one of them's abnormal, trust me. And what you do on this is you just lay the pad down and you add 1 drop to each pad, okay? You don't actually fill up a conical tube and dip it like you do with these. Okay, the reason that these are really, really expensive and these are not so expensive is these have quality control microscopic elements. Like if you spin it down and look at it underneath the microscope, you see white cells, red cells, bacteria. It's all made up. It's not the real thing. It's what I showed you on the microscopics. That's what I was using with these bottles when you looked at the red cells and the white cells and all that stuff. But this is called external QC. In other words, when you read this section in your book, you treat these exactly like you would a patient specimen. You run it right alongside patient specimens. These don't have exact amounts, but they have known amounts. So pretty much, I hate to even say this, but I don't want to confuse you guys. For whatever reason, your analysis controls are backwards. The level 3 is the normal, and the level 1 is the abnormal. That's the only controls I know that are like that of everything in the lab, okay? And then they really make it confusing because they take the normal control, and it's a positive pregnancy, and the abnormal control is negative for pregnancy, all right? So I'm just gonna throw that out there to confuse you, all right? But you have to treat them just like patient samples, and every day you run those controls, and you have to get them in range. In other words, your normal has to have normal results, and your abnormal has to have abnormal results. It doesn't have to be dead on accurate, but it has to be within the ranges for you to accept that quality control run. Once those work, you can run patient specimens for the next 24 hours. Yeah, Darren?
These controls in these kits, they represent what we refer to as external QC.
Yep, external QC. Now let's talk about internal QC. If there's external QC, okay, this is real easy. All internal QC is all those serology tests you did this summer. You know how it would wick up the kit and you'd see 2 lines. One line would be in the test region and one line would be in the control region. That line that's in the control region, that's internal QC. It has it represents in no way did you read the test correctly. All it represents is you added the right amount of reagent. Like let's say you're doing a pregnancy test, real simple. It's a wave test. It says add 3 drops of urine to the hole and let it wick up and look for a line in the test region, right? Simple enough. Well, if you don't get a line in the control region, that's your internal QC. That's just saying, hey, you did add 3 drops of some sort of fluid to this kit. you could add 3 drops of water and that internal control will probably work, all right? But it's just letting you know that you added the right amount of substance.
It seems to me that internal QC is engineered into the testing equipment.
Okay, yeah, if you wanna think of it like that, yes, definitely.
Whereas external is not inside of the equipment, it's alongside of it, and you have to add it to the
Yep.
equipment.
External catches anything you're doing wrong in the procedure, like if you're looking at the results wrong, if something's wrong with your machine or whatever. All internal means is that you put in the right amount of substance. It doesn't mean that your machine's working. It doesn't even mean necessarily that you're gonna read that kit correctly. It just means that you added the right amount of things. See, some kits used to a long time ago, you had to add 4 drops of reagent A, 4 drops of reagent B, add a swab, twist it around, then add some sort of an indicator. Well, if the phone is ringing or something while you're doing that, you may just, you may have forgot to add reagent B. If you forget to add reagent B, that internal control is not gonna come up in your kit, and it tells you, look, repeat that, do it again, for whatever reason. You didn't have enough fluid for that test result to come up, okay? This can be simple, this external control, or it can be a big headache, because it doesn't matter how good of a tech you are, if your controls aren't working, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong, but you can't turn out patient results until you get those in range, okay? So if everything goes smooth and on your first run, they all come in, in value, then you're good to go. But if they don't, well, then you've got trouble and you've got to repeat that. So if you will, look at the very top of page 18. You see on 18, this is called a quality control chart. And if you'll look at the top line on that, see how it's got things like glucose, bilirubin, ketones, specific gravity. Seeing all those abbreviations? Okay, well, guess what? In this kit, I'm just gonna pull one out. I'm pulling out the package insert. It's brand new. I've never opened it before. But it tells me on here, for example, I know you guys can't see it and I'll show you in lab, but this will just help you to have an understanding of it. Okay, this comes in the kit and it says, okay, for your Covitrol level 1, the high abnormal control without abnormal urovalidity controls, it says, if you are just doing the test visually, in other words, we're not using a machine to read this. We're gonna read it by eyeball, okay? It says right here, the pH of this control has to fall between 7 and 8, okay? It says the protein level better fall between 100 and 500 milligrams per deciliter. You see what I mean? It gives you the ranges. You don't have to calculate nothing, but you have to make sure that that's what that result gets, that you get in between that. If you don't, you have to keep repeating it, and there's a big graph in your book that tells you exactly what you're supposed to do if your controls do not come in range, okay? Anyway, all these come, gives you all the results. It even tells you what the microscopic is supposed to be. Like how many red blood cells should you see per high power field? How many white blood cells should you see? You have to document every one of those results, yeah.
So the info on there, there's somebody, it needs to fall into this category for this substance, and that category. Those are reference ranges, aren't they?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, reference ranges. Yep. Okay, so, if you will, look at page 19 with me, and they actually have a flow chart, and pretty much most labs utilize this. I want to look at this flow chart. You will not be tested on it, but I just want to kind of go through this to show you exactly what you do if you're having trouble and you're not getting your QC. Everybody with me on the blue box, number 1 says run your control. Now I'm not gonna say in control because that means start testing if it works, okay? But this is the order you're supposed to go in. It says if you run your control and it's out of range or it's out of control, you go to step 2. Step 2 says inspect the control for the outdated, check the expiration date, check how it was stored, check the lot number, or look for signs of contamination, okay? If I look in this bottle, let's say I'm having trouble with my controls and I look in this bottle and I go, well, there's no powder in there. and I look at the expiration date and it's 2003, I know why my controls aren't working, right? Somehow I found a box from 2003. And so you know what to do then, you're gonna change. So let's just keep going and like, what do you do, okay, if this doesn't work? It says, if there's no obvious explanation, you just retest it, okay? You do the test again and see if it comes in range. If it's out of control, we gotta do the next thing. So the next thing says, well, just throw that bottle that you added 60 mils of deionized water, even though it's gonna cost the lab some money, throw it away. Make up a new one, okay? So you make up a new one. If that doesn't work, you go to step 4. Step 4 says, well, if that happened, open up a new can of reagent strips and test with the new control. I don't know if I have the strips, but the multi-control bottle, okay? Like maybe it's something with the strips themselves and not necessarily the control bottle. Says if that's out of control, notify the supervisor or resource person. Do not proceed with testing. That means don't be turning out any patient urinalysis test results until you can fix that situation. I've never had that happen. I'm just saying, in the 11 years that I worked, it never got to a point where it's just like, I don't know what's wrong. I can tell you the only discrepancy that I ever used to have with urinalysis testing, to where I really did have to go in and look and try to figure out what was going on, is I opened up a bottle one time, and you're gonna open up them so many times that you kind of just get a feel for what all the colors on the pad look like when they're brand new. And I remember I looked at the very top pad and it was already purple. Well, that's the leukocyte pad, okay? And purple was positive. So in other words, it was positive when I took it out of the bottle before I ever dipped it into a urine. And we got to, checking all that stuff. The whole entire case of reagent strips that we got, all of them were positive for leukocytes. I mean, it was something had happened where water had gotten in them, something happened, but we had to, actually the company, Multisticks or Bayer, who made that, they actually sent us an entire lot for free because that entire lot was bad. That's the only real world thing that happened to me about that, yeah.
And a lot, another word for a case?
Yeah. Or sometimes more than one case. It's a whole lot, a whole batch that they made under one lot number. The whole thing was bad. It wasn't just that one bottle. All right. All of that stuff, guys, that's in the right-hand column on page 18, like trends and shifts and control ranges, we're gonna cover that Wednesday next week. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip that for now. I don't think I even test you on that per se in the urinalysis test, but you will get tested on that at the chemistry. All right, internal control, I feel like we've already covered that. Electronic controls, you don't deal with that much in urinalysis. I just want you to understand there are certain electronic machines that can be used, like if you're using a Clinitech or something, to where there are certain controls where the machine will alarm to you. Like it might say, bulb variance, which means the spectrophotometer that's reading the different pad colors, maybe the light's starting to go dim, the bulb's starting to burn out or something like that. That's an electronic control. That's an error code that's given to you from the machine. There's an analyzer a lot of times in a lot of hospitals they use, it's called an iStat, that they use in like areas of surgery and things like that, that are gonna have electronic controls, not necessarily the external controls. Proficiency testing or external quality assessment testing. Proficiency testing is the testing of unknown samples received from an outside agency and provides unbiased validation of the quality of patient test results. Okay, so this has nothing to do with external quality control. What this has to do with, if I am a company called CAP, all right, the College of American Pathologists, and Haley Hawley is the lab director at National Park Medical Center, for her lab to be accredited, she has to participate in what's called a CAP surveys. Different companies make them, but the most popular one is probably called CAP. They come in a styrofoam box, white styrofoam, if they're like it used to be. Every test you do in the lab, whether it's urinalysis or whatever, periodically, usually it's once a quarter, like every 3 months, they're gonna send a kit. I'm gonna keep it with urinalysis now. They're gonna send a styrofoam box. It's gonna have 5 CAP little bottles in it that's filled full of urine or filled full of make-believe urine. They already know the results to all those bottles, okay? What they're doing is they're testing your laboratory to make sure, hey, regardless of all of this stuff you're doing to make sure you're turning out right results, we want to verify that if we send you a vial that is positive for a pregnancy test, that's what results you get, okay? So you have 5 vials. You'll have to do urinalysis on all of them. You'll have to test each vial for glucosides, proteins, specific gravity, pH, all that type of stuff, and you have to get the correct results. If you don't get the correct results, that validation company is going to send you an email and says, look, vial number 3, we don't know what happened, but that's not the results that you're supposed to get for that sample. Basically, you're taking a test. You're taking a test and you have to perform so well on that test, or they are going to make you do corrective action. Like they're going to do an investigation and they're going to say, you know, this is kind of dangerous. We sent you 5 vials for you to do a pregnancy test on, and yeah, you got 3 of them correct, but 2 of them you said they were negative and they were supposed to be positive. I mean, that's a big deal. Think about it. If 2 out of 5 you miss, that means on average you're probably missing 2 out of 5 patients, right? So that's what they do. That's all it is. It's checking to make sure you're doing everything right.
That's when I'll discontinue the testing until they decide they're able to do the testing, and that affects your
Yeah,
lab.
it's rare, but I've seen that happen. I've seen a lab that had to stop doing proton testing because they missed so many results on their CAP survey, and the accreditation agency was not satisfied with the corrective action that was taken for that. And they had to stop doing coagulation testing, or, I mean, they couldn't do it. That's a big deal. That means all those patients taking Coumadin wasn't going to be coming to that clinic anymore to have their proton tested, which meant all those billable tests weren't going to be getting paid for by Medicare or Medicaid.
So what you described to us, this whole scenario where this accreditation organization eyeballs some clinic, hospital, doctor's office, etc., and says, do what we want you to do and get it right. That's all falls under the umbrella of the definition of proficiency testing. Thank you.
And if you're doing that, paying all that money, you can advertise your lab and you can say, we are a CAP accredited laboratory. Just like this college campus, this MLT program is a NACLS accredited MLT program. Like, we have a outside agency that looks at everything we do in this program to make sure we're on the up and up. And we have to pay for that privilege. We have to pay them to give us their stamp of approval, just like these laboratories. They're not just sending you those styrofoam boxes with all those little bottles for free. You're paying for that. And, but one of the guidelines of CLIA is that you have to be an accredited laboratory in order to be reimbursed from Medicare and Medicaid. So all your labs are going to be accredited, or else they're not able to see, patients. They're not able to do the testing, basically.
So the NACLS accreditation is kind of parallel to proficiency training testing.
Yeah, I mean, just everything in healthcare has to be accredited. The X-ray program is accredited, this program is accredited. That's the only way you guys are able to sit for your ASCP certification. Like, we could offer this program on campus to kind of help you guys understand this. We could offer this program and not be an accredited program. Just like, look, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm gonna show you how to do all this stuff, right? But if we're not accredited, they won't allow you to take that certification exam that you guys get to take at the end of this course. So why would you go through a program if you couldn't be certified? You understand what I mean?
Yes.
And so labs are the same, it's the same way. All labs have to be accredited by somebody, maybe not CAP. There's some labs that say CAP is too expensive. I'm going to be accredited by a different accreditation agency, but they all have to be accredited by somebody. I'll show you one more thing, talking about these proficiency testing. I think I've still got some back here. You know all these Kodachromes we're showing you guys in hematology? You know all these things where I'll put on here and you guys will look at the picture and tell us what it is? These are actually CAP surveys that were sent to hospitals that they give us after they take them. Like, in hematology, they send you these little Kodachrome things and you have to put them in here. And if they're showing you a picture of a lymphocyte, you better call it a lymphocyte. Because if you call it a monocyte, okay, they're gonna ding you on it and say, well, you're doing diffs in your laboratory and whoever did this accreditation, they didn't, you know, they missed a simple lymphocyte that we sent them a picture of. Now, they have rules about who does the proficiency testing. They make sure that you don't hedge your bets on proficiency testing, and by that, what I mean is let's say that Aunt is the best tech in my lab, and I know Aunt always gets good results. She doesn't, she doesn't gun deck stuff. She's not ever in a hurry, and so you know what? I got a proficiency testing in the mail from pregnancy testing. I'm gonna make sure that Aunt does it. You see what I mean? Like I ain't letting Haley do it. Probably won't work. But I'm gonna let Aunt do it. Can't do that. It has to be done by working techs, and you can't use the same tech every time. Like for example, if I'm doing a CAP survey on urinalysis testing, doing the regular urinalysis test and pregnancy test, well, if I could have my way, I would want my urinalysis supervisor doing every proficiency test, right? Because that's all the only department they work in. You can't do that. You have to do it. You have to fluctuate between techs, and it can only be done by the people that actually perform the test. It can't be done by just supervisors or pathologists or something like that. So basically, you're cheating. You can't do that. Okay, one more thing we need to go over real quick on page 20 is post-examination variables. We've already been talking about pre-examination and examination. I just want you to know post-examination results, we've already hit on this a little bit today, has to do with the reporting of the results, errors that can be made when you're reporting the results. And the only thing that I have really highlighted in my book that I want you to understand is in the right-hand column toward the bottom, there's a few lines there. It says the time of the call and the name of the person receiving the results must be documented according to the facility's policy. This has to do with the calling of critical results. One thing good about the urinalysis laboratory is very few results that you do in urinalysis are considered critical results. Like if you turn out a positive pregnancy test, you don't call the doctor and say, hey, I'm just letting you know Jane Doe's got a positive pregnancy. The only test I remember, and I think it refers to this in the book, that you have to actually call in urinalysis is if you have a positive Clinny test on a baby that's like less than 2 years old, because that can indicate just a roundabout way they can be mentally challenged if they don't fix that baby's diet. Okay, that's the only result that I remember that we ever actually had to call the floor on urinalysis. Now, some departments like chemistry, you got to call all kinds of results. I mean, potassiums, critical glucoses, all of that type of stuff. But you're not on the phone a lot in urinalysis having to call critical results.
So you have it set up like at St. Joe's where the box pops up and says critical, and you have to put the name and everything for that you dummy proof.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no way you can, if you don't end up calling a critical result, you intentionally did not call it. That's all it is. They've got safeguards in place where it won't let you mess that up. Now when I worked, it wasn't like that. It was in the same color, everything, it didn't come up, it wasn't blinking at you in red and all that type of stuff. You just had to make sure you call critical results. But through technology now, they've got it to where there's safeguards in place to where if that result is critical, the only way you don't end up calling that is if you purposely didn't end up calling. Okay, you guys will bear with me, I know we got a 3-day weekend coming, I wanna go over some review questions, and unless you guys wanna take a break, you can come back for 10 minutes, if you guys wanna knock it out, I'll let you guys go.
Let's knock it out.
Okay. I didn't think there was no way we'd have time to cover 2 chapters today. All right, again, I'm not calling on certain people or anything, but you guys just kind of collectively tell me what you think the answers to some of these would be. Number 1 on page 22. In the urinalysis laboratory, the primary source in the chain of infection would be what?
C.
Specimens. Everybody agree with that? I tried to emphasize that to you guys today. Number 2, the best way to break the chain of infection is?
A.
All right, good. See, these are pretty, common sense is a lot of these. Number 4, an employee who is accidentally exposed to a possible bloodborne pathogen should immediately what? That's that question I was telling you about. The right answer, according to the right answer, is supposed to be report to a supervisor.
B and C would make more sense and report to us.
I know, and that's why I talked about that in lecture, okay, but.
If I ever got yelled at for something like that, yeah, I'd have to quit my job.
Okay, now some of these I didn't specifically go over, but I think you should know them. Number 5, personnel in the urinalysis laboratory should wear lab coats that are fluid resistant. I mean, those other answers don't make sense, okay? I mean, I'm just kind of providing you guys can understand that. I want to mark this one. Number 6, all of the following should be discarded in biohazardous waste containers except right. Urine containers are the only ones that actually can be, that do not have to be discarded in a biohazard bag. Number 7, an employer who fails to provide sufficient gloves for their employees may be fined by which of the following?
C.
Right, OSHA. Even though I didn't go over that, again,
Their safety. Yeah.
OSHA oversees safety precautions. Number 9, proper hand washing includes all of the following except.
D.
D. Turning on the water with a paper towel. I disagree with that, but that's the answer. I think you should turn it on with a paper towel.
Turn it on, I'm telling you, you can turn it off now.
Number 10, centrifuging of an uncapped specimen may produce a biological hazard in the form of what? What do you think the answer is?
D.
D? Aerosols.
I don't know what that is.
Aerosols. Anytime you centrifuge an uncapped specimen, it can create an aerosol, okay? Centrifuges are built now to where there's no holes in them to where fumes can come out, but you're supposed to have a lid on a tube if you're centrifuging, okay? We may break that rule a little bit, because sometimes you're gonna see people in the lab sometimes spin things that don't have a cap on it, but you shouldn't do that, okay? Because that's the problem with it, is because it can create an aerosol. Number 14, employees should not work with radioisotopes if they are
Pregnant.
good. Number 12, when combining acid and water, ensure that acid is added to water. If you do it the reverse way, it can create bubbling and it can create splashing, okay? And it can actually get in your eyes. I want to put an asterisk by number 12. Number 24, employers are required to provide free immunization for what?
Hepatitis
Hepatitis B, not HIV, hepatitis B virus. Maybe you guys will remember this one from chemistry. Number 21, pipetting by mouth is?
D.
Yeah, D, not acceptable. I told you guys it's in every book, okay? Cannot mouth pipette. I know you guys know that already, but just remember that. Number Number 17, the system used by firefighters when a fire occurs in the laboratory is?
B,
Raise.
race.
By firefighter, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I actually think there's a few answers for that. There, B, C, or D could be involved in all of that. Okay, one thing that, before I let you guys go, in this urinalysis textbook, at the end of every chapter, there's gonna be case studies.
Yes, sir.
Okay? I'm not gonna go over them. Generally, I won't go over them, but I wanna let you know, on every test, I generally pick certain case studies. I don't make them word for word, all right? But I do make them to where if you went over that case study, you can probably get that answer correct. We are required to ask what's called level 3 questions on every exam. So you will have case studies. Like my urinalysis test, for the most part, the entire test, like when we took the coax section for me, the entire test will be multiple choice. But then like the last 2 pages of the exam will be in a case study format where you kind of have to put everything together. And so, spend time looking at the case studies. I tried to cover the majority of things that I thought were important for this chapter. I do recommend read the chapter. There's just certain things you'll pick up from reading. You may like reading better than listening to me, okay? You may comprehend it better. So read the chapter, because I can't assure you everything that I think is important out of the chapter is what they'll ask you on your registry test, okay? So I'm leaving, that's your homework, is read the chapter and do a little bit of research on your own. As far as the material for the test, I covered it. I mean, there's a reason why I'm picking out certain things, but read the chapter, it makes things make sense better, all right? All right, we will probably not do a lab in this class until we get to the physical exam of urine. And that lab will be very familiar to you because we did it in the intro class, but we'll go more in depth, okay? I'm not just gonna show you 2 urines and say, look, this one's cloudy and this one's clear. We're gonna really get into the physical exam of urine and cover it in more detail. So, next Friday, I will probably try to knock out 2 chapters next Friday.
Yes, sir.